What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more of the Thompson Twins, and we're returning to the 1989 album Big Trash. Thank you again to Phil for providing the larger catalog. And we're up to the title tune. I was amused from the very first moment I saw this record title, and I suspect as we get to the title track, there's some cheekiness or some sarcasm or maybe even self-deprecation. But yes, it sounds like the idea of a large collection of things which do not have value, or at least do not hold the value they used to, which is to say trash is by and large composed of things which have completed their utility, which are no longer able to provide the sustenance, entertainment, or function that they did before, and thus the remnants, the remaining parts that are not used, I suppose the conceptual offal, O-F-F-A-L, is then discarded. So, I don't know, maybe it's commenting on the music industry, maybe it's talking about pop culture, maybe it's talking about society more broadly, maybe it's again like a cheeky self-reference but with a bit of a wink and an amusing glance. So I don't quite know how to read it, but it is funny even before we get some specifics. Let's give it a listen. This is Thompson Twins. The track is Big Trash from the album of the same name, 1989.
Backseat of a limousine, it's the fairy lights that light up your hair, and that black rubber dresses that you wear. Big trash, big trash, people paying hard cash, yeah, the big trash. Lipstick kisses on your breast. Chandeliers from a million silhouettes. The castle in the Japanese department store. The way you giggle on the squeal and roar. And photographs of the Pope in bed. Without the tiny girls, she gets ahead. I'm finding heaven in the Ritz Hotel. And throw yourself down the Appalachian. Big trash.
What a clever little song. So I'll talk about the lyrics in a minute, but I do think it is very much with a wink and tongue-in-cheek. That was the sort of connected phrase that I wanted to use earlier that my brain stalled out on. But first, sonically, I enjoy the like light, somewhat funky feel of it overall. I like that main melodic lead, as well as that atmospheric like melodic pad synth or like atmospheric synth line that came in, or at least that I noticed in the second half of the tune. That was a really nice touch. And there's also that harder edged, like metallic kind of, I don't think it was technically a bass line, just like a harder edged synth that also provided some nice balance. So yeah, sonically I enjoyed it. And his vocals on this one are amusing because they're almost like seedy, like they're delivered in a way that makes them a bit like trashy, if you will. Like they sound like a dirty old man in the back of a limousine, you know, with lipstick kisses all over him and so on. So I do think it's having a bit of fun, but I also think it's making some profound points. Like number one, I think it is attacking consumerism and consumer culture where, you know, the newest item and this, you know, contraption, this appliance, which maybe you don't really need, and which, you know, some people buy only because it's new and it's flashy. And I think there's a comment in there about like a Japanese store, which, like, you know, he talks about both Old England and the US of A with Uncle Sam. You know, I remember, like, there's even entire movies in the 80s about how, like, US manufacturing is being supplanted or taken over by Japanese companies and so on. And so there was a lot of worry in the 80s about, like, competitive multinational corporations that were taking away local jobs and so on. And I feel like maybe there's a reference to that in that one line, but certainly it sounds like it's making a bigger point about like the way in which society becomes sort of beholden to these trends, and you know, from one, like, you know, keeping up with the Joneses, but also like this sort of disposable culture, this idea that we're buying things, spending a lot of money on them, and they're not even really that valuable or inherently engaging or valuable in terms of providing some measure of, you know, like social fabric or cultural distinction or psycho-emotional satisfaction. They're more like the consumeristic equivalent of a sugar high, where, you know, you buy something, you use it for a few days, and then it sort of, the luster comes off, and oh, there's this new thing that's, you know, that's what other people are buying now, and you end up throwing it in the bin, and you've sort of wasted money and, you know, sort of rendered crass and hyper material your daily experience, your social experience, your cultural engagement. So it feels like it's taking a shot at all those things. And maybe specifically, again, in regard to the UK and the United States, which, you know, the 80s were the Reagan 80s here, and, you know, the Thatcher 80s over there, and I feel like maybe there's a knock on this, like, it's all about business, manufacturing, and, you know, getting people to buy things and so on, and what that was doing to society and culture and psychology. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's a detail or two that I didn't catch, or maybe I'm reading a bit too much into some of those lines, but it feels like it is witty and cheeky commentary about, you know, let's say serious social, cultural, and economic processes and realities, but it's done in like this fun, like, you know, almost funky type of song, so there's a bit of contrast. And again, those vocals really give it a particular flavor. And, you know, in fact, the first verse is like maybe a little bit different from what I've just said, because it was talking about like being in the back of a limousine, and again, like lipstick kisses, and what was it? There was something about a dirty something, like dirty chandelier or something. So it sounds like this like decayed or sort of seedy decadence, where it's like, again, people are buying money to have experiences that are supplements or replacements for more substantive, like, art and refinement and emotional satisfaction, love and sex and so on. So it sounds like, you know, people are taking the cheap commercial option, even though it costs money, rather than trying to find more substantive and, again, what's the, like, deeper phenomena in all those realms. So yeah, it sounds like there's a few different targets along the way here. I am keen to hear what people might have to say about it. do let me know. And Luca, can we make the switch like in Raiders of the Lost Ark? I think we can. We will see you next time. Peace.